I was one of 50 lucky entrepreneurs who were invited to Necker Island to join 4 days with Richard Branson.
Sir Richard Branson is one of the most high-profile billionaires in the world.
He's the only human on Earth who made it to about $8 billion companies.
They were also the first airline to offer on-screen entertainment.
And the next morning, I was packing already. Someone knocked on my door and said, Richard wants to speak to you. And Richard said, well, hold on, I call Mark Zuckerberg and make it work. And I mean, Richard could probably get to every person on the planet.
His impressive track record as an entrepreneur, Branson's
He made it happen that each and every one of these 50 entrepreneurs felt special. So isn't that impressive? Richard Branson, who achieved so much, listens to the people who were there. The sky would be a big, big, big billboard, and you can put up a message. What would it be? And he replied, welcome to a solo episode of Aesthetics and Biz. Today I would like to share my story about me and Richard Branson. I was one of 50 lucky entrepreneurs who were invited to Necker Island to join 4 days with Richard Branson. I would like to start with the ending. The day before we traveled back to our home countries, I went on a swim with a guy called Bruno. And Bruno is an extreme sportsman from Colombia, a friend of Richard. And he wanted to swim from Necker Island to Mosquito Island, which is about 4.5 kilometers and 9 in total. The longest I swam was about 2 kilometers, and that was 3 years ago. And I only have one leg. But this entire spirit of this island and these 4 days really was about everything is possible, refuse to accept the unacceptable, and pushing boundaries. And I decided to go on this swim and try my best. And I did early in the morning. And I made it to the other island, 4.5 kilometers. Then jumped into a boat and went back, while Bruno went both ways. And the next morning, I was packing already. Someone knocked on my door and said, Richard wants to speak to you. And I was freshly showered and not dressed and not stressed. And my heart was bumping. I don't know why he wanted to speak to me. And I went to the breakfast area, and Richard immediately stood up and said, congratulations to your achievement yesterday. May I celebrate you? And he lifted my arms and celebrated me in front of the group. And I think that's the most impressive part of this man, a multi-billionaire. I don't know any other person on this planet who achieved so many things and at the same time lived such a rich and full life. That's really, really rare. And he's able to really, he's the reason for someone's smile every day. He made it happen that each and every one of these 50 entrepreneurs felt special, at least somewhere in these 4 days, if not many times. And I then remember after the breakfast, I went back to my room, get ready, pack everything. And it was the only rainy day on Necker Island. And I walked down to the Red Docks. The Red Docks is the area where we take off back to the main island. And Richard was waiting there, sitting in the rain, waiting for each and every person to say goodbye. Not a necessity for a billionaire, but he did. And he started carrying, I mean, this guy is 73, and he started carrying luggage, helping people into the boat, taking off the slopes and everything. He was just so sweet and caring. And he saw me on the boat and shouted, you are amazing, right? Richard Branson. Super touching. And then he waved to all of us and jumped in the water and kept on waving. And I think that was the most impressive moment of these 4 days and showed the core of his success. I think he's able to create this culture in a company, a culture of connection and a culture of feeling belonging to the tribe, feeling being loved of what you are. And I think that's a secret of successful companies, especially when you run a company in the people's business like we do. And I think that's the biggest takeaway for me. I was struggling a lot with that because I always had this pressure. And if you grow and ramp up a company, you have a lot of pressure with people, with money, with struggles, with troubleshooting all the day. And you often forget about the people. And I realized how much impact my attitude has to the company. So if I'm in a good mood, taking my time with the employees, only tiny things, asking how's your day, how are you feeling, making a joke, that literally changes the company energy within a minute. And it's the other way around. If you are not in a good mood, the entire company shifts to that, and you can feel the tension. It's impressive to see how much impact you have as a leader. And Richard is my absolute role model on that. Well, I mean, honestly, it's easier if you are a billionaire and if you grown your company to a certain size where a good management team is running your company. And I think I had a personal discussion with him, and that's another great takeaway. He said to me, don't work in the company, work outside the company. And I think he's absolutely right, because the most tension I felt when I was doing the operations, and there's a reason for that. If you build a company, it's a very personal thing. You as the founder and builder of the company, you are personally connected to your company. And if someone is leaving, it's aside the fact that this person is leaving for whatever reason, it's a personal thing. At least in my case, it was always personal, and I took it home and I couldn't sleep, and I thought, what was going wrong? And or like patients, I get like 10 presents per week, or nice cards or nice emails from patients, how happy they are. And I just take it for granted. But if one patient is criticizing something, it's a personal thing, and it affects me. And I just recently restructured my clinics and tried to get me out of the operations, and I feel so much better. And I think my role is so much more of a help, because I can focus on strategic things, and branding, which is much more my strength. And it sounds silly, but I'm in a good mood. I'm not that closely related anymore to the business, which gives me a totally different attitude. And I'm almost the nice guy, and I can walk through the clinic and say hello to everybody. And you feel that that's my role as a leader, and it should be. And the advice of Richard, don't work in the company, work outside the company, is brilliant and so 100% true. And that's, by the way, the secret. He's the only human on Earth who made it to about $8 billion companies, right? There might be richer people on the planet, like wealthier people like Elon Musk or Jeff Bezos, who have massive companies, but none of them made it in 8 different industries to $1 billion company. And that's Richard's strategy. He was able to, he built the companies for the first few months or maybe few years. And then early on, he took on great management teams to run the business. And he was going for the next endeavor. And I think that helped me a lot. I honestly didn't learn the big magical business strategies, but these tiny things, that the attitude of you as a leader is super important, and that your role as a leader is not running the operations. Your role is strategic, branding, and creating the culture from the top. So that was the most impressive part, but there's so much more to talk about, so stay tuned. Let me first talk about the island. When you arrive at this island, you immediately feel this billionaire's lifestyle, but in a good way. You know, I've never been to Jeff Bezos' yacht or whatever, but I was thinking, let's assume Jeff Bezos would invite me to his life, which I would appreciate a lot. I would like to meet these guys, definitely. But later, when the second invitation came, I would feel uncomfortable and would tell him, listen, I can't keep up with this lifestyle. And I don't feel comfortable to come to your 200 feet yacht and be a guest because I can't give anything back to you, which is even close to that value. That's different with Richard's Island. You see the level, it's massive, but it's all this kind of easy luxury. So the island is like a paradise. Animals all over, colorful flowers. It's a nature paradise. And also Richard, he doesn't care. He walks around in his T-shirt, and there might be some spots on there, and his trousers and the hairs. He's just a relaxed guy who just has fun in life, and you immediately feel comfortable and welcome. And his stuff is they're so lovely, and honestly, it's connected with Richard. He knows everyone by name. He knows the stories. There was one person who was taking care of some baby animals, and he asked about how is it going. And you know what? At that moment, I thought, what is the secret between me and my patients? And it should be with my employees as well. I have this strategy that when I see a patient, I spend at least the first 2 or 3 minutes with only personal small talk. I either know about something about the patient. Maybe his wife was in hospital, or the dog was sick, or they went on holidays, or the kids are at college in US. So I take on these topics. Say, how is your wife doing? What about your dog? What about the kids? And you literally see these people. It's an ice-breaking moment, right? These people lighten up, and they just feel this comfort and this connection. And I think especially in a doctor's-patient relationship, it's so important. And if you can handle this, it's part of the treatment and part of the success as a doctor, in my opinion. And Richard is able to do that on big scale, and try to improve on that. So that's about the island and the atmosphere on the island. We were at the main house, and I haven't been aware how historic this island is. There's this temple close by, and in this temple there was Barack Obama, Michelle Obama, Desmond Tutu, Mandela, and Richard really is worried about our planet, is worried about humans, and he takes all he can to make the world a better place. And I can give so many examples. He flew out refugees out of Iraq. He had this plan back then when the Iraq War appeared that he wanted to fly out, what's the name of the Iraqi leader? Hussein, what I forgot about that. But back then he wanted to fly out this leader to prevent the world from another war. And therefore he had this temple, and he called all the leaders to come there and discuss and find solutions. Sadly, it didn't work out, but there's so many more examples. And the very first evening he said, do what you think is the right thing. And he gave so many, even during our stay there, one morning he wasn't around. And later that day he told us why. Because there is an Iranian rapper who did something wrong in the eyes of the Iranian leaders, and he was threatened to be killed. And Richard Branson took off this morning to do some phone calls and reach out to people to help this rapper in Iran. And it's not for PR reasons, it's not for marketing. Nobody knows this story, and many others. He just does it. So that was really impressive. About his company, he has that, and I love it because so many, the entire stay was some kind of reassurance that the ideas I have might be the right. So I had the feeling within the last few years, that creating a culture of venture is super important. A culture of always something is going on. So most of you might know SkinMed and the dynamics of SkinMed. So there's always something going on. We open a restaurant. We have our own magazine. We have these international classes. I'm on Shark Tank. So there's always something going on, and that keeps people connected to the company. It's exciting. What's the next thing, and everyone is involved. So I think Virgin works the same way. And you should watch a documentary, by the way, of Richard Branson. Unfortunately, it's only on HBO in US, but if you have the chance, do it. He also is very keen on making it a personal experience for the customer, but also for the employees. So Virgin is very much focused on making the workplace a valuable and fun place to work at. And he's so right. It's the same strategy we have. You would say customers is focus number one. Yes, that would be the logic. But in times of shortage of qualified employees, and it will get worse, you have to tweak it a little bit. And our focus is employees. Because if our employees are happy and we don't lose them and we have enough applications in the pipeline, the customer will be happy. And if the customer is happy and the employees is happy, the company is happy, right? Happy people, happy customers, happy stakeholders. So that's a very simple thing to do, but many companies haven't realized that, in my opinion. So that was super interesting. He also creates this culture of a cheeky startup, which is super interesting. So if they want to make a decision, they can do it in smaller teams instead of asking several commissions and groups and board members. And this is the same for us. We can take decisions very quickly. We can do that in the morning with the board, and that's done. And that's how Virgin is built. So I think they have about over 400 companies, and each company is its own entity, and they can take their own decisions in the same manner. So keep the culture of a cheeky startup. So let me quickly go on how the days were structured. So the day starts early in the morning, 6:30, with some sports activities. If you are willing to do that, you can come. If you want to sleep longer, no problem. What is offered? So Richard loves tennis, so you can play tennis. And the first day I did, and the cool thing was he first asked who is not good in tennis, and I raised my hand, and he was caring about these people first. So he took the 3 or 4 people who never played tennis to a pickleball field and introduced us to play pickleball, and then he went back for the tennis game. He loves water sports, he loves cycling, so every morning something was going on. And one morning we went on this cycling tour, and I love cycling, and Richard is 73. And we went on this neighbor island, and we went up a hill. And I'm not a good hill climber because I'm too heavy and I only have this one leg, which takes off like 40% of the power. But I had no chance to follow him. I had no chance. Richard Branson went off to the summit of this mountain. It was incredible. However, it's never about, competition or winning. The spirit of the entire day is have fun, Your only competition is yourself. So that was great. Love that. So morning sports. Also, they offer yoga classes, or you go for a swim in the ocean, whatever you want. Then around 9, it's breakfast. And Richard joined the breakfast. It's a big group on his huge balcony, and we have breakfast together. And the funny thing is, when you wake up in the morning and want to go to your sports class, you pass by a small coffee area where you can grab a coffee. And it's very simple, right? It's only a coffee machine and a fridge with milk, so nothing fancy. And these coffee areas, they're all these original letters of all the world leaders. So there's a letter of Barack Obama saying thank you to Richard for spending days at Necker Island. And Barack Obama went to Necker Island right after he lost his election back then with Donald Trump. And Richard is quite frank and open, and he told me, well, Richard, Barack and Michelle were coming, and I remember Michelle was super concerned of Donald Trump, and she was sorting all kinds of papers and was worried, and Barack was super relaxed, and they went out for some sailing trips. And there's a picture where you see Richard and Barack joking. It's also in the coffee kitchen. There's a letter of Princess Diana, who spent holidays on this island, said, "Thank you." Elton John with Candles in the Wind. Another letter of Michelle. It's crazy. It's in the coffee kitchen, and it shows the nonchalance of Richard Branson, right? If I would receive a letter of Barack Obama, I probably would reconstruct my entire house to lead people to this letter, and it would be a wall of its own for this letter only, while Richard just puts it in the coffee kitchen. Remarkable, absolutely remarkable. And he also told me that he bought Necker Island for 100,000 British pound back then. I don't know what's the what's the worth of Necker Island now, but it's you have to add several zeros probably. And there was one interesting conversation with Fiona. She's global Virgin. She's responsible for all Virgin brands. And I said, what is the number one strength of Richard's amongst many others, which explain his business success? And it might not be popular because only few people have it. And she said, instinct. He has a super instinct for business and marketing and branding, which is just given. So I found that very remarkable. However, after breakfast, we all moved to this historic temple where Tutu and Mandela was, and we have classes. And Richard is with us, but he has this motto, listen, don't talk. Again, very incredible. The ones who were talking were the executives of Virgin. So there was this Shirisha Bandel, the astronaut of Virgin Galactic, a lady, an Indian lady, the third Indian lady who went to space. She talked about their space trip. Amazing. It's amazing, amazing story. Other leading people of Virgin who gave their insights. I loved Nathan, who was responsible or is responsible for the marketing of Virgin Voyager, the cruise company, which were founded in COVID. So he started with his cruise ships during COVID. So super hard times for an entrepreneur, but he made it somehow. So we had these classes, and Richard only had tiny breakouts. And what I found super impressive, he came to the front and he sat down and he had a regular book, just a book, his notebook. And he said, you know what, this is important for me. I have this notebook always with me and I write stuff down. And I love to listen instead of talk. So isn't that impressive? Richard Branson, who achieved so much, listens to the people who were there. Compared to Richard Branson, all of us were tiny entrepreneurs, but he listened what we said. And one guy said, hey, Richard, I love your Virgin Lounge at London Heathrow, but have you ever considered to do an outdoor training area? And guess what? He took a note in his book and probably called the responsible person the next day and suggested this outdoor training area. And this person probably checked if that's feasible and if there's demand for that. And I had the chance to quickly gaze into his book, and at the top of the page was a smiley and the claim, be the reason for someone's smile today. Isn't that? He's incredible. And he was there for everyone. He answered every question, and I really loved it. And he talked about his notebook, and that he once flew from New York to London, I think, and a Jewish person was sitting at his side. And he said, Richard, I love your airline, but have you considered to maybe do kosher food? If you would handle kosher food or would offer kosher food, good kosher food, I can guarantee you a bunch of Jewish people would use your airline, especially on this track from New York to London. And he did that. He implemented kosher food into his airline, and it was a super success. There's so many other examples. He gives his planes have names. So it's not like other plane companies do 00151N. It's Mermaid Jenny, or what he has. He has female names for his planes. And once an engineer said to Richard, I don't think I do a better job on your planes, but it's a difference if a plane has a name or if it's just a number. And I thought, how smart. And also people enjoy going on a plane with a name instead of 0015N. Although also other airplanes in the meanwhile have names, but they don't celebrate it that way, right? You see on Richard planes, you see these figures and the name under it. So it's a real psychological moonshot, in my opinion, to do that. And there's so many examples for this branding genius. So, I mean, he did all these adventures with the balloon and with the speedboat through the ocean. He tried to break records and always Virgin. So before the word influencer exists, Richard Branson was one. He was probably the first influencer, entrepreneurial influencer in the world. And also, the attempt of creating an extraordinary personal experience. So he said, when people come to the airport, they have to find a parking place. They might be late. They go to the check-in and then the security lane. So Virgin want to make sure once they step into the Virgin world, it's a special world. It's a special lighting. It's a special sound. It's a special smell. The people behave in a special way. Virgin Airways was the first company who invented the backseat entertainment thing. So nowadays you see that in every airplane, but Virgin were the first. And back then he started with one airplane. He rented an airplane from Boeing, and he was tackled by British Airways. So it was really, really a tough game. But he survived as one of very few airlines. And then he wanted to do this entertainment thing in the back seat, right? And banks were willing to finance the airplanes, but not the videos and entertainment systems in the airplane. So it was about 10 million, and he did it on his own. And it was a super success. Today, every airplane has these entertainment devices. So that was impressive. Nathan, the chief marketing officer of Virgin Cruise, told this story about socks. So, you buy a pair of socks. What was the problem with socks? You put them in the laundry, and very often one sock is missing. So Virgin has, for their Voyager cruise customers, they sell packs of 3 socks. So they sell 3 socks instead of a pair, just to make sure if one sock is missing in the laundry, they still have 2 socks. It's tiny things like that, but it's just brilliant. One of the leading guys said they had these cruise ships ready, and Richard took a walk, and he went to all these balconies of every cruise cabin and said, something is missing here. What about hammocks? Why can't we put up hammocks? And they called the cruise construction company, and they said, no, it's super difficult and we can't put up hammocks. But Richard insisted, and at least they made it happen that every cruise cabin has a hammock. And there was this one slide in one presentation saying small things are big things. And that's exactly how I think. And I try to emphasize my teams here at SkinMed every day that all the details count. Often we have this water tank at the coffee machine is white because of the calc, so it's all these tiny impressions. A customer doesn't consciously take these impressions, but subconsciously they might recognize all these tiny things and all these tiny details where I think, especially we as a medical clinic, as a beauty clinic, have to take care of them. The smell, the tiny chocolates, the coffee, the water, the flowers, all the tiny details in our rooms and the light. It's all important, every detail. And there was another great detail. Every table at Necker Island is constructed that you can dance on tables. And if you see my videos on Instagram, you see Richard dancing on tables. And, it's these tiny... Now we come to the fun parts. We often have events for our employees, but it's so hard to bring the fun part in, right? So Richard has a very simple recipe. He has either white or red. So if he does a party, it's a theme, white or red. And everyone is dressed in red or in white. And then it always starts with dancing on the table, and he takes a napkin and shakes it. And that's how he creates this kind of fun spirit. And he's the first who jumps in a pool with all his clothing on, and so much to learn from him. And I love this idea of constructing tables so you can dance on them. And he also has rockstar suites in his hotels and on the cruise where all the tables are constructed to dance on them. We talked about recruiting, how he recruits people, how he finds the right people. What was remarkable, he doesn't like applications. Richard likes or loves videos. I don't even know, but he's dyslexic. So he loves videos, and the application at Virgin mostly works with a 3-minute video. And I think that's a great idea because you learn much more in a video than on a sheet of paper. And the second thing they do, especially when they hire for executive positions, they send a driver to the airport to pick this candidate. And the driver often is Richard himself, dressed up as an old man. The attempt of this is he wants to find out how these people will treat him, right? He's an old man, weak, and he comes to the airport and he wants to see whether the candidate accepts that Richard carries the suitcase and puts it in the car, and how he talks to him. And I think that's a super smart move, and I probably will do that in a similar way. Because it's clear when people sit in front of me, they show their best side and they try to be brilliant and everything. But how do they behave with other people? So another executive of Richard said that she always meets people in a neutral area, like a Starbucks or a coffee, and with the same attempt to see how their attitude is, how they treat people. And I think it's a really brilliant way of doing interviews. So that's something I've learned. So these temple classes were interesting. They were going until 2 o'clock, and then we had lunch, mostly at the beach or in the pool, sushi boats. It was always crazy and with DJs and nice. And then we moved on to afternoon fun. He has a water sports area you only can dream of, with everything you can imagine. And a team of young, nice people taking care of you, sailing boats, surfboards, these scuba divers and everything. And you can do that in the afternoon. You can play tennis. You're busy all the time. So I really actively try to take myself out to reflect and read or so. And then it's a Q&A in the evening with Richard. And he's very open and very frank and very relaxed. It's always a big pleasure to have these Q&A sessions, and then we have dinner and then party. I skip most of the parties because I enjoy doing morning sports. And on the way to Necker Island, I decided to not ask people, who you are, where you're from, what you're doing. I decided to ask them different questions, and questions like, what are you dreaming of? What are you passionate about? What is the accomplishment you're the proudest of? And I want to tell you one tiny anecdote. I met Bruno. Bruno is an entrepreneur from Colombia, friend of Richard, and this extreme sport guy who was for the swim tour on the last day. And I missed my flight in Miami, flight back to Switzerland. So I was another day in Miami, and Bruno was there. and we met at Soho House. And I asked Bruno this question: what is the thing you the most proudest of so far, or the accomplishment you're most proudest of? And he was thinking for a moment, then came up with this story. Back in 2019, there was a big crisis between Colombia and Venezuela. Venezuela had some kind of dictator. I don't know the details of the story, but however, hundreds of thousands of refugees wanted to move to Colombia, but the president closed the borders and closed the bridges. So there were hundred thousands of refugees starving at the other end of the border. And Bruno came up with the idea of doing a benefit concert like Live Aid with all the superstars. And I don't know the reason why, but they only had 15 days to do that. And this is a story of really pushing boundaries. This is a story of refusing to accept the unacceptable. They were able to organize this benefits concert with all Latin American superstars, including Shakira. At least 370 people showed up, and they organized this event in 15 days. It's an unbelievable story, and there are videos on YouTube, you can see that. Imagine the logistics, imagine all the superstars with all their schedules, flying them in, the press, the police, the safety, incredible. Well, Richard helped, which is great, but it's still a massive accomplishment to organize a benefits concert with 370,000 people in 15 days. And I'm so glad I asked this question to Bruno this way, because otherwise I wouldn't find out. Otherwise he would say, I'm Bruno from Colombia and I'm an entrepreneur. Maybe he would explain his business. But I think asking the right questions gets so much more out of people than you might believe. And it was garnered with funny stories like if you are an NGO and you want to donate on Facebook, back then Facebook was the main tool, it takes weeks and months until you get approval on Facebook. So Bruno called Richard and said, well, we have the problem. We can't donate money and we can't advertise on Facebook as an NGO because it takes 4 weeks to get approval. And Richard said, well, hold on. I call Mark Zuckerberg and make it work. And so Richard called Mark Zuckerberg and make it work. And of course, if you have this kind of network, and I mean, Richard could probably get to every person on the planet. He can call the Pope, he can call Donald Trump, Barack Obama, Joe Biden, Mark Zuckerberg, Elon Musk. Amazing, really amazing. And one last thing. I had the chance to ask Richard one question. And my question was, Richard, imagine the sky would be a big, big, big billboard. And every human, every animal, and every plant could watch this billboard in the sky. And you can put up a message. What would it be? And he replied, all we need is love. Thank you.